Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving deep into something really crucial in Malaysia, something you've probably heard whispers about, Malay Reserve Land.
Yeah, MRL.
Exactly.
It's a big one, loaded with history and well, a whole lot of challenges these days.
It's meant to be this safety net, right, for
Yeah.
the Malay community, the Bumi Putra.
Exactly, giving them a solid footing, a way to share in the country's prosperity. That's the idea anyway. But like with a lot of well-intentioned policies.
It's gotten complicated.
Yeah, to say the least.
So we're digging into the how and the why,
Yeah.
what's actually going on with this system designed to empower the Malay community.
And why it seems to be faltering?
So to understand MRL, you got to understand the heart of it. It's about more than just who owns what land.
It's about social equity. It's about giving the Bumi Putra a way to build wealth, have a stake in the nation's progress.
Right, like a leg up in a system that hasn't always been on their side.
Exactly.
But here's the thing, that leg up, that safety net, it's getting smaller and a lot smaller. We're talking about a dramatic drop from 3 million hectares to something like 1.7 million.
Yeah, that's a huge chunk of land.
Massive. And what does that mean for the future of the people it was meant to help? I mean, that's a big question mark right there. And that's what we're going to unpack today.
Absolutely, because that land, it doesn't just disappear, it goes somewhere.
And according to sources 1 and 3, one of those places is right into the hands of development projects. Now, development isn't inherently bad,
No, not at all.
but when it comes at the expense of the very people it's supposed to benefit,
Then we have a problem. The reports we've looked at, they point to this lack of adequate land replacement.
right, like you're taking away this resource, this land, but what's replacing it?
And in many cases, there's just not a suitable alternative. And we're talking about communities who might depend on this land for farming, for their livelihood.
For their heritage.
Exactly. And suddenly they're being pushed aside. So we see this tension, this clash between progress and the principles of MRL.
And it gets, honestly, even more complicated
Yeah.
because it's not just about the land disappearing. Source 2 dives into these frankly shady dealings where MRL, meant for Bumi Putra companies, ends up with,
With non-Bumi Putra entities, and often it's all very hush-hush.
yeah, like under-the-table, backroom deals, and that just completely undermines the entire purpose.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got the Malay Reservation Enactment, the very law designed to protect these lands, and it's being...
Well, it's being ignored.
Exactly.
And this issue of weak enforcement, of turning a blind eye, it keeps popping up. Sources 3 and 4, they both highlight this like it's a broken record.
Because it's a recurring problem. There's this gap between what the law says and how it's actually enforced.
It's like having a rule book, but no one to enforce the rules.
And that opens the door for mismanagement, for these irregularities to slip through the cracks.
It makes you wonder, if the protections are so easily bypassed, are they even protections at all? And what does that say about the system as a whole?
It raises questions about accountability, about transparency, and about whether the institutions meant to uphold these laws are really equipped to do so.
It's a bit of a mess.
It's complicated.
That's one word for it. And then there's the whole other layer of the market value puzzle, which is fascinating and frustrating all at the same time.
Because you see, MRL, it can't be freely traded, bought, and sold like other land. And that restriction, while intended to protect it, also kind of...
Stifles it.
Exactly. It limits its economic potential. You've got this valuable asset, but you can't fully unlock its value.
And sources 1 and 4, they both point to this. It's like having a vintage car. It might be valuable, but if you can't sell it,
It's not doing you much good financially. And this impacts things like Bumi Putra discounts, those reduced prices on property specifically for Bumi Putra buyers.
right?
But because of these MRL restrictions, even those discounts are impacted. It can depress prices, making development less attractive.
So it's like a double-edged sword, meant to protect, but also potentially hindering.
Which leads to the million-dollar question. Can we find a better way? Can we keep that spirit of MRL alive, that social safety net, but also create real, tangible economic opportunities?
Right. It's not about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's about...
Finding a system that actually works, that's sustainable for the long haul.
It's clear there are no easy answers here. This issue, it's a tangle of historical baggage, political maneuvering.
Economic realities.
Exactly. And it's impacting real people, real communities. It's easy to get lost in the weeds here, But I think it's crucial to remember that at the heart of it, we're talking about people's lives, their livelihood.
Absolutely, and that's why finding solutions is so important. How do we empower the Malay community? How do we make sure that the original intention of MRL, that promise of a fairer future, is actually realized?
Yeah, how do we learn from the past, from the mistakes that have been made?
And how do we approach this challenge with fresh eyes, with collaboration, with creativity? That's the real question here, isn't it? How do we create a system that works not just for some, but for all Malaysians?
That's a question for all of us to consider. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, folks. It's a conversation that needs to continue.